The Lost Chambers of Ravenclaw. The early autumn breeze swept through the corridors of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, carrying with it the scent of fallen leaves and the promise of a new term's adventures. For Harry Potter, now in his 6th year, the castle had become more of a home than Privet Drive had ever been. Yet, as familiar as the ancient stone walls and moving staircases had become, Hogwarts still held secrets waiting to be discovered. Harry sat in the Gryffindor common room, absent-mindedly flipping through his potions textbook. Hermione was engrossed in a massive tome titled Forgotten Architectural Marvels of Magical Britain, while Ron was attempting to finish his Transfiguration homework with increasingly dramatic sighs. "Did you know," Hermione said suddenly, looking up from her book, "that Rowena Ravenclaw designed sections of Hogwarts that were never documented in Hogwarts, a history?" Ron groaned. "Please don't tell me you're about to suggest another research project. We've got enough homework as it is." "It's not that," Hermione said, excitement creeping into her voice. "According to this book, there's an entire chamber complex that Ravenclaw created but concealed shortly before her death. It's said to contain knowledge she deems too valuable to be lost but too dangerous to be freely available." Harry's interest was piqued. "And this chamber isn't mentioned in Hogwarts, a history?" "Only in passing," Hermione replied. "Just a vague reference to Ravenclaw's hidden repository. Most historians believe it's just a myth. Like the Chamber of Secrets was just a myth?" Harry asked with a raised eyebrow. "Exactly," Hermione said, her eyes gleaming. "And look at the timing in this book. Ravenclaw concealed her chambers around the same time she lost her diadem. What if there's a connection?" Ron tilted his head. "But didn't Helena Ravenclaw steal the diadem?" "Yes," Hermione said, "but what if Rowena was protecting something else, something she couldn't entrust to her daughter?" Harry felt a familiar stirring of curiosity. "So where would this chamber be?" "That's the problem," Hermione said, frowning. "The book doesn't say. It only mentions that Ravenclaw created a complex riddle system that would lead worthy seekers to the chamber." "Of course she did," Ron muttered. "Couldn't just leave a map, could she?" "But there is this," Hermione continued, flipping to a page with an illustration. A verse allegedly written by Ravenclaw herself. Harry and Ron leaned forward to read the elegantly scripted words. "Where wisdom dwells in lofty towers. Seek the place where knowledge flowers. For elements in perfect harmony will reveal the past to me. Words alone will not suffice. Mind and magic must entice. When stars align above the lake, the first step the seeker must take." "Cryptic, isn't it?" Harry said, running a hand through his perpetually messy hair. "Ravenclaw Tower seems like the obvious starting point," Hermione suggested. Ron sighed. "And how exactly are we supposed to get into Ravenclaw Tower? Last I checked, none of us were sorted into that house." "Luna," Harry said suddenly. "Luna could help us." "Perfect," Hermione exclaimed. "And the verse mentions, when stars align above the lake. Tonight's the autumnal equinox. Astronomical events often trigger magical phenomena. So we're really doing this?" Ron asked, looking between his friends. "Searching for another secret chamber at Hogwarts? Because the last one worked out so well." "We're just going to investigate," Hermione assured him. "If we find anything dangerous, we'll tell Professor McGonagall immediately." "That's what we always say," Ron mumbled, but he was already closing his Transfiguration book. Finding Luna Lovegood proved easier than expected. She was sitting by the Black Lake, barefoot despite the cooling temperatures, appearing to be in deep conversation with a cluster of water plants. "Hello, Harry Potter," she said without turning around. "Hello, Ron and Hermione. The bubbling Plimpies told me you'd be coming to see me today." Right," Harry said, exchanging glances with his friends. "Luna, we need your help with something." "Is it about Ravenclaw's lost chambers?" Luna asked, finally turning to face them with her protuberant eyes blinking serenely. Hermione's mouth fell open. "How did you?" "Oh, Daddy wrote an article about them last year," Luna said, standing up and brushing off her robes. He believes they contain the original breeding pair of Kubblehorn snorkax. Ron stifled a laugh, but Harry pressed on. We need to get into Ravenclaw Tower tonight. Can you help us? Of course, Luna said airily. But you should know that the entrance changes during the equinox. Tonight, the Ravenclaw door will appear on the 7th floor, near where the room of requirement usually is. How convenient, Hermione said skeptically. It's not convenience, it's magic, Luna replied simply. Rowena Ravenclaw believed in accessibility during astronomical alignments. She thought it broadened the mind. That night, under the cover of Harry's invisibility cloak, which was getting increasingly difficult to accommodate 3 nearly grown teenagers, they made their way to the 7th floor. Luna was waiting for them, seemingly unconcerned about being out after curfew. There it is, she whispered, pointing to an ornate bronze door that Harry was certain had never been there before. Instead of the usual eagle knocker, this door featured an intricate astronomical chart that seemed to shift and move with the night sky. How do we get in? Harry asked. Luna stepped forward and touched her wand to the center of the chart. Seek wisdom beyond knowledge, truth beyond fact. The door shimmered but remained closed. That's the usual password, Luna explained, frowning slightly. But the equinox door requires something different. Hermione stepped forward, examining the door closely. The verse mentioned 4 elements in perfect harmony. She pointed to small symbols engraved around the chart, a flame, a droplet, a leaf, and a swirl of air. We need to activate them in the right sequence, she said, then hesitated. But which sequence? In perfect harmony, Harry repeated thoughtfully. Not dominance or balance, but harmony. Fire warms water to vapor, which feeds plants, which produce air, which feeds fire, Luna said in her dreamy voice. Worth a try, Ron said, looking nervously over his shoulder. Hermione touched her wand to the symbols in that order: fire, water, earth, air. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the symbols began to glow, colors swirling across the astronomical chart until they formed a new constellation, one that resembled a diadem. With a soft click, the door swung open. The Ravenclaw common room was bathed in starlight filtering through high windows. Midnight blue tapestries adorned the walls, and a domed ceiling depicted the night sky in stunning detail. But something was different tonight. A spiral staircase that normally wouldn't be there descended from the center of the room into darkness below. That's not part of the regular tower, Luna whispered, her usual dreaminess replaced by genuine awe. Lumos, Harry murmured, leading the way down the staircase. The steps seemed to go on forever, spiraling deeper than should have been possible given the castle structure. Finally, they emerged into a vast circular chamber lined with bookshelves. At the center stood a marble pedestal supporting a basin similar to the pensieve in Dumbledore's office. Incredible, Hermione breathed, immediately drawn to the bookshelves. These texts, some of them are titles I've only seen referenced in other books. Many were thought to be lost forever. Look at this, Ron called from across the room. He was standing before a wall covered in intricate runes. These symbols keep changing. Luna approached the wall, her head tilted in curiosity. They're responding to her presence. Ravenclaw enchanted them to reveal different knowledge to different seekers. Harry, meanwhile, was drawn to the pedestal. The basin contained not memories but a swirling, star-filled substance that seemed both liquid and gas. Instinctively, he leaned closer. Harry, be careful. Hermione called, but it was too late. The substance rose up like a gentle wave, engulfing Harry's face. Suddenly, he wasn't in the chamber anymore. He was standing in what appeared to be the same room, but centuries earlier. Before him stood a woman with striking features and an air of immense intellect, Rowena Ravenclaw herself. Another seeker, she said, her voice echoing as if from a great distance. Few find their way here, especially in these troubled times. Professor Ravenclaw? Harry managed to ask, aware that he was experiencing some kind of magical recreation rather than true time travel. I am but an echo, she replied. A fragment of knowledge preserved for those who seek wisdom. You have entered my repository during an alignment of stars, a significant choice or perhaps mere fortune. We found your verse, Harry explained. My friends and I were curious about this chamber. Ravenclaw's echo smiled. Curiosity, the seed of wisdom. But wisdom without ethical foundation leads to darkness. This chamber contains knowledge that could either elevate or destroy the wizarding world. What kind of knowledge? Harry asked, thinking of the dangerous magic that had created Horcruxes and other dark artifacts. Magic in its purest form, Ravenclaw answered. Understanding beyond the constraints of wands and incantations. The fundamental nature of magical being. She gestured around. I separated this knowledge from the school curriculum because I believe that magical knowledge should be earned through intellectual growth, not merely granted. That sounds like something Hermione would appreciate, Harry said with a small smile. Your friend values knowledge. But does she understand its responsibility? Ravenclaw asked, her form beginning to fade. This chamber will reveal itself differently to each of you. What you learn here is what you are ready to learn. Nothing more, nothing less. Wait. Harry called as her image dissipated. What about your diadem? Is there a connection to this place? Ravenclaw's voice came as a whisper as she faded entirely. My diadem enhances wisdom but cannot create it. True wisdom comes from within. Remember this, Seeker. Knowledge without compassion becomes tyranny. Knowledge with compassion becomes liberation. With that, Harry found himself back in the chamber, gasping for breath as his friends surrounded him with concerned expressions. Terry, are you all right? Hermione asked, gripping his arm. I saw her, Harry said, still feeling disoriented. Ravenclaw. Or some kind of preserved memory of her. What did she say? Luna asked eagerly. As Harry recounted his experience, the chamber seemed to respond, the air growing thick with magic. The runes on the wall began to rearrange themselves, now forming distinct patterns that moved like constellations. Look, Ron said suddenly, pointing to the floor. Beneath their feet, the stone was transforming, revealing a mosaic of Hogwarts Castle with glowing points throughout its structure. It's a map, Hermione realized, showing other hidden spaces within Hogwarts. There are dozens, Luna said in wonder. Hundreds, maybe. Harry knelt down to examine the map more closely. One particular spot caught his attention, a chamber beneath the astronomy tower that pulsed with a golden light. That one seems important, he said, pointing. According to this position, Hermione said, analyzing the map, that would be directly beneath the astronomy classroom, but there's no known room there. A distant tolling bell caused them all to jump. Midnight, Luna said. The equinox alignment is at its peak. As if responding to her words, the pedestal in the center of the room began to transform. The basin sank into the marble, and in its place rose a crystalline structure resembling a miniature version of the astronomy tower. Within it, a tiny golden light pulsed in sync with the spot on the floor map. I think we're meant to find that place next, Harry said. But why? Ron asked. What's so special about it? Before anyone could answer, the room shattered. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the bookshelves began to rock precariously. The alignment is ending, Luna said urgently. The chamber is closing. Grab what you can. Harry instructed, hurriedly selecting a small leather-bound book from the nearest shelf. Hermione was already stuffing several volumes into her expandable bag, while Ron and Luna examined the map one last time, as if committing it to memory. They raced back up the spiral staircase as tremors intensified behind them. Emerging into the Ravenclaw common room, they barely made it through the bronze door before it vanished completely, leaving only solid wall in its place. That was close, Ron panted, hands on his knees. Too close, Hermione agreed, clutching her bag protectively. But look what we found. These books contain magical theory I've never even heard of. Harry opened the small volume he'd grabbed. The title page read Fundamental Principles of Magical Essence by Rowena Ravenclaw. Unlike most magical texts, this one contained no spells or potions recipes, but rather complex philosophical discussions on the nature of magic itself. This explains why some wizards are more powerful than others, Harry said, scanning the contents. It's not just about skill or practice, it's about understanding the fundamental nature of magic and your connection to it. That could be incredibly valuable information, Hermione said, eyes wide. Or dangerous, Ron added cautiously. Knowledge like that, it could change everything about how magic is taught and practiced. Luna, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. I think that's exactly what Ravenclaw intended. Not for the knowledge to remain hidden forever, but to be found by those who would use it wisely. Harry nodded slowly. And now we have to decide what to do with what we found. We should tell Professor McGonagall, Hermione said immediately. Agreed, Harry replied. But first, I think we need to find that other chamber, the one beneath the astronomy tower. Something tells me this is just the beginning of what Ravenclaw wanted us to discover. As they made their way back to their dormitories under the invisibility cloak, Harry couldn't help but feel that they had stumbled upon something that could change their understanding of magic forever. Hogwarts had many secrets, but this one felt different. Not something dark or dangerous like the Chamber of Secrets, but profound and potentially transformative. And as the equinox night gave way to dawn, the small book in Harry's possession seemed to pulse with possibility, a testament to Ravenclaw's belief that knowledge, properly understood and applied, was the greatest magic of all. In the days that followed, Harry, Ron, and Hermione found themselves consumed by what they had discovered in Ravenclaw's chamber. The books Hermione had managed to save contained theories about magic that challenged everything they had been taught at Hogwarts. Meanwhile, Harry pored over Ravenclaw's personal writings, searching for clues about the chamber beneath the astronomy tower. Listen to this, Harry said one evening as they sat in a secluded corner of the Gryffindor common room. Magic is not merely a tool to be wielded but a resonance to be understood. A wizard who knows only spells is like a musician who knows only which keys to press but not why the music sounds as it does. That's beautiful, Hermione said, looking up from her own book. And it makes sense. We're taught how to perform magic, but rarely why magic works the way it does. But how does this help us find the next chamber? Ron asked, practical as ever. Harry flicked through more pages. There's a passage here about the stars being conduits for magical energy. Ravenclaw believed the astronomy tower was positioned specifically to channel that energy. The next alignment would be the winter solstice, Luna said, having joined them for their research session. But that's months away. There must be another way in, Hermione insisted. Something connected to what we already know. Harry closed his eyes, recalling the vision of Ravenclaw. She said the chamber reveals itself differently to each person, showing what they're ready to learn. So what were we ready to learn? Ron mused. The map, Harry said suddenly, eyes snapping open. It showed hundreds of hidden spaces in Hogwarts. What if that's the point? Not just to find one specific chamber, but to understand that Hogwarts itself is full of undiscovered knowledge. Hermione's eyes widened. A magical ecosystem of learning. That would be just like Ravenclaw, creating not just a school but a living, evolving repository of magical wisdom. As they discussed these possibilities, the portrait hole opened, and Neville Longbottom climbed through, looking exhausted but oddly satisfied. Where have you been? Ron asked. Helping Professor Sprout with a special project in Greenhouse 4, Neville replied, slumping into a nearby chair. We're cultivating star orchids. They only bloom when exposed to starlight focused through crystal. Professor Sprout has this amazing crystal apparatus set up in the greenhouse dome. Harry and Hermione exchanged significant looks. Neville, Harry said carefully, this crystal apparatus, what does it look like exactly? It's like a miniature tower, Neville said, yawning. With different facets that align with specific stars. Professor Sprout said it's been at Hogwarts for centuries, but no one knew what it was for until she experimented with it. Harry pulled out the small book and flipped to a particular page he marked. There, in Ravenclaw's elegant handwriting, was a sketch of precisely such a device. Neville, Harry said, excitement building in his voice, I think you've been using a key created by Rowena Ravenclaw herself. Neville blinked in confusion. For what? For opening doors, Harry replied with a growing smile. Magical doors. The next morning found the four friends, with Neville now included in their secret, making their way to Greenhouse 4. Professor Sprout was attending a herbology conference in London, which gave them the perfect opportunity to examine the crystal apparatus without explanation. The greenhouse dome was filled with exotic plants that seemed to sway and reach toward the crystal structure at its center. Standing nearly 6 feet tall, the crystalline tower captured and refracted light in mesmerizing patterns across the room. It's beautiful, Hermione breathed, circling the apparatus. And look, these markings along the base match the runes we saw in Ravenclaw's chamber. Neville, how exactly does Professor Sprout use this? Harry asked. She adjusts these outer rings to align with specific stars, Neville explained, demonstrating the movement of several movable crystal bands. When they're properly aligned, the light focuses to the center crystal and projects onto the flowers, causing them to bloom. Luna stepped forward, her usual dreamy expression replaced with focused intensity. May I try something? Neville nodded, and Luna began adjusting the rings with surprising precision. My mother was an experimental charm worker, she explained as she worked. She studied ancient magical devices before her accident. This reminds me of diagrams in her research journals. As Luna made her final adjustment, the crystal tower began to hum softly. Light collected at its apex, then shot downward through the central crystal, projecting a complex pattern onto the greenhouse floor. The stone tiles where the light touched began to shift and rearrange, revealing a narrow spiral staircase descending into darkness. Bloody hell, Ron whispered. Neville stumbled backward. I've been working in here all year and never. How did you know? We didn't, Harry admitted. We're following a trail Ravenclaw left centuries ago. Are we going down there? Neville asked, looking nervous but resolute. Harry nodded. I think that's what we're meant to do. With a collective deep breath, the 5 students descended the stairs, wand-like guiding their way. Unlike the grandiose chamber beneath Ravenclaw Tower, this space was intimate and warm. The walls were lined not with bookshelves but with living plants, some of which emitted soft, bioluminescent glows. At the center of the chamber stood a simple wooden table with 5 chairs arranged around it. On the table sat a crystal vessel similar to the tower above, but in miniature. 5 chairs, Ron noted. As if she was expecting exactly 5 people. Or any 5 people who were worthy of finding this place, Hermione suggested. As they cautiously approached the table, the crystal vessel began to glow. A voice, the same one Harry had heard in his vision, filled the chamber. Seekers of wisdom, you have found the Garden of Stars. Here, magic and nature intertwine to create possibilities beyond conventional understanding. The mini crystal tower projected light onto the table's surface, creating a 3-dimensional map of Hogwarts and its grounds far more detailed than the one they had seen before. Rowena Ravenclaw believed in the interconnectedness of all magical knowledge. The voice continued. What you learn in one discipline informs another. This chamber is but one node in a network of learning spaces throughout Hogwarts. Neville leaned forward, fascinated by the visualization of plant life throughout the castle grounds. These patterns, their magical ley lines running through Hogwarts. Precisely, young herbologist, the voice affirmed. The very foundations of Hogwarts were laid along these channels of natural magical energy. The greenhouses, the astronomy tower, even the Quidditch pitch, all positioned to harness specific magical resonances. Harry watched as the map highlighted different areas of the castle in turn, showing how they connected to form a complex magical ecosystem. But why keep the secret? Hermione asked. Why not include this knowledge in the regular curriculum? Some knowledge must be earned through personal growth and discovery, the voice replied. Rowena believed that the journey to understanding was as important as the understanding itself. Those who seek merely to possess knowledge without experiencing its discovery risk misusing its power. Like Tom Riddle, Harry murmured. Many have sought short paths to power, the voice acknowledged. But true magical mastery comes from harmony with the fundamental nature of magic, not domination over it. Luna, who had been quietly examining the plants along the walls, spoke up. These are all extinct species, aren't they? Plants that were thought to be lost forever. Preserved here, the voice confirmed. Each with unique magical properties that were too powerful to be commonly known, yet too valuable to be forgotten entirely. Neville approached the plants with reverence. Some of these could revolutionize magical medicine if used properly. That choice now falls to you, the voice said. What you have discovered is not merely academic knowledge, but living magic. How you share it, or whether you share it at all, will shape how it influences the wizarding world. The five friends exchanged weighted glances, understanding the responsibility that had been placed on their shoulders. I think this is what Dumbledore meant, Harry said slowly, about choices defining who we are. We've been given access to this knowledge. Now we have to decide what to do with it. We need to be careful, Hermione cautioned. If this information fell into the wrong hands. But we can't just keep it to ourselves either, Ron argued. Not as it could help people. Perhaps there's a middle path, Luna suggested in her serene way. We can work with professors we trust, McGonagall, Flitwick, Sprout, to gradually integrate this knowledge into Hogwarts in a responsible way. A new interdisciplinary approach to magical education, Hermione said, warming to the idea. Breaking down the barriers between subjects, just as Ravenclaw intended. Neville nodded enthusiastically. And we could start with projects that clearly benefit everyone, like using these plants to develop improved healing potions. As they discussed possibilities, the crystal vessel's light began to shift and change, responding to their conversation. The map of Hogwarts transformed, showing not just what was, but what could be, a vision of the school with new spaces for integrated learning, gardens flourishing with rare magical plants, and students from all houses working together in harmony. I think she approves, Harry said with a smile, feeling a sense of purpose he hadn't expected when they first began this adventure. The voice spoke one final time before fading away. Remember that knowledge is neither good nor evil, but a tool whose impact depends on those who wield it. Choose wisely, seekers. As they emerged from the chamber back into the greenhouse, Harry felt a profound sense of connection not just to his friends but to Hogwarts itself. The castle was more than just a school. It was a living repository of magical wisdom, designed by the founders to teach not just through formal lessons but through exploration and discovery. In the days that followed, Harry, Ron, Hermione, Luna, and Neville began the careful process of sharing what they had learned with selected professors. Professor McGonagall was initially skeptical but became increasingly intrigued as they presented evidence from Ravenclaw's writings and the chambers they had discovered. This explains so much about Hogwarts' architectural peculiarities, she said, examining the books they had retrieved. Albus always suspected there was more to the castle's design than mere whimsy. Professor Flitwick was particularly moved by the discovery of his house founder's hidden legacy. Rowena always taught that wisdom was a journey, not a destination, he squeaked emotionally. How fitting that her greatest lessons would be discovered rather than simply taught. With the careful guidance of the professors, the friends began to explore more of the hidden spaces revealed by Ravenclaw's map. Each chamber contained unique knowledge related to different aspects of magic. A workshop beneath the Quidditch pitch focusing on the magic of movement and flight. A meditation room near the astronomy tower teaching the connection between cosmic forces and mental discipline. A brewing chamber adjacent to the dungeons containing potion innovation centuries ahead of their time. For Harry, these discoveries provided a welcome distraction from the looming conflict with Voldemort. In learning about the fundamental nature of magic, he began to understand his own powers in new ways, not as weapons to be wielded, but as connections to be understood and harmonized. I think this is what will make the difference in the end, he confided to his friends one evening as they sat by the lake. Voldemort seeks to dominate magic through fear and power. But Ravenclaw showed us that true magical mastery comes from understanding and harmony. As stars began to appear in the twilight sky, reflecting on the lake's surface, Harry felt a sense of peace despite the challenges ahead. Hogwarts had revealed yet another of its secrets, reminding them all that in the magical world, as in life, the journey of discovery never truly ended. And in that moment, watching his friends discuss their plans for sharing Ravenclaw's legacy with future generations of students, Harry knew that whatever darkness lay ahead, the light of knowledge would help guide their way. Echoes of time, Harry's Marauder Adventure. The corridor on the 7th floor of Hogwarts was deserted this late in the evening. Harry Potter paced back and forth 3 times, his thoughts focused intensely on what he needed. After his 3rd pass, a door materialized in the wall. The room of requirement had answered his call once again. Harry had been coming here nearly every night since Sirius died, seeking solace in the only way he knew how, by surrounding himself with memories of those he'd lost. Tonight, the room would become a sanctuary of remembrance, filled with photographs and objects connected to his parents and godfather. He pushed open the door and entered, finding himself in a cozy space lined with photographs, much as he expected. But this time, something different caught his eye, a shimmering object standing in the center of the room, bathed in moonlight streaming from an enchanted skylight. "What is that?" Harry whispered to himself, approaching cautiously. The object appeared to be some kind of hourglass, but far larger and more complex than any time turner he had seen before. Its golden frame was engraved with runes that seemed to shift and change as he looked at them. The sand within wasn't sand at all, but what appeared to be tiny, swirling galaxies of blue-white light. A small plaque at the base bore an inscription, "The Tempest Mirror," for those who seek true understanding of what was, but not the power to change it. Harry circled the device, fascinated. He reached out, his fingers hovering just above the ornate surface. "I wouldn't touch that if I were you," came a voice from behind him. Harry spun around to find nearly headless Nick floating several feet away, his silvery form shimmering in the dim light. "Sir Nicholas. What are you doing here?" "The better question, Mr. Potter, is what that is doing here," Nick replied, gesturing toward the hourglass. "The Tempest Mirror hasn't been seen within these walls for at least 2 centuries. "What exactly is it?" Harry asked, drawing his hand back. "A most dangerous artifact," Nick explained, drifting closer. "Created by a wizard who was consumed with regret over past mistakes. Unlike a conventional time turner, which physically sends one backward in time, the Tempest Mirror creates well, think of it as a window into the past. One through which you can step." Harry's heart quickened. "You mean I could use it to see my parents? To meet them?" Nick's expression grew grave. "Technically, yes. But Harry, the past is a dangerous place to visit, especially for one who has so many ties to it. The mirror doesn't change the flow of time as we know it. It creates a temporary branch, a sort of dream of what was. When the magic ends, you return to the moment you left, and the branch collapses. Nothing you do there will change our reality." "But I could still see them," Harry insisted, his eyes drawn back to the swirling galaxies inside the glass. "I could meet my parents, talk to them. The room provided this for a reason, I suppose," Nick sighed. "But remember, Harry, the mirror's magic has limits. Tradition holds that you can remain in the past only until the next moonrise. After that, you're pulled back whether you wish it or not." Harry's mind was racing. One night with his parents, with Sirius in his prime, with Remus before the years of suffering had worn him down. Just one night. "How does it work?" he asked quietly. Nick hesitated, then relented. One need only focus on the specific time they wished to visit, then touch the glass. "But Harry—" "Thank you, Sir Nicholas," Harry said, his decision already made. "I understand the risks." The ghost looked as though he wanted to say more but finally nodded. "Very well. I shall leave you to it. But remember, moonrise to moonrise. Not a moment longer." After Nick departed, Harry stood before the mirror, gathering his courage. He knew exactly when he wanted to go, his father's 5th year at Hogwarts, just like the memory he had seen in Snape's pensive, but perhaps a better moment. A time before his parents' deaths were even a possibility, before prophecies and betrayals. He closed his eyes, concentrating on that specific time, on the Hogwarts of 20 years ago, on the Marauders in their youth. Then, with a deep breath, he pressed his palm against the cool glass. The sensation was nothing like using a time turner. Instead of feeling like he was being yanked backward, it was more like the world around him was dissolving. The room blurred, colors bleeding into one another, sound stretching and compressing until, with a sudden stillness, everything solidified again. Harry opened his eyes. He still stood in the room of requirement, but it had changed. Gone were the photographs and mementos. Instead, the room had transformed into what appeared to be a secret clubhouse. Tattered sofas and armchairs were arranged in a circle around a crackling fire. Maps and sketches were pinned to the walls, and a table in the corner held what looked suspiciously like the beginnings of the Marauder's map. He was alone, but evidence of recent occupation was everywhere. Open books, half-eaten chocolate frogs, abandoned quills. Harry's heart hammered in his chest. He had done it. He had traveled to the past. A sudden noise outside the door made him freeze. Voices were approaching, young and carefree, laughing about something. Harry panicked momentarily, realizing he hadn't considered how to explain his presence. Frantically, he looked around for somewhere to hide, but it was too late. The door swung open. "I'm telling you, Mooney, it'll work perfectly if we just..." The voice cut off abruptly as 4 boys entered the room and spotted Harry. Harry's breath caught in his throat. Standing before him, looking utterly bewildered, were the Marauders themselves. James Potter was in front, his messy black hair and glasses so like Harry's own that it was like looking in a mirror, save for the eyes and the absence of a lightning scar. Beside him stood Sirius Black, handsome and vibrant, without the haunted look that Azkaban would later etch into his features. Behind them were Remus Lupin, his face unmarred by most of the scars he would acquire in years to come, and Peter Pettigrew, small and eager-looking, not yet the traitor he would become. "Who the bloody hell are you?" Sirius demanded, drawing his wand with impressive speed. James quickly followed suit, his hazel eyes narrowing suspiciously. "And how did you get in here?" Harry realized he was staring and forced himself to speak. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude." "That doesn't answer the question," Remus said, his voice calm but firm. "This room is supposed to be accessible only to us." I'm new," Harry improvised, his mind racing. "Just transferred. I was exploring the castle and found this room by accident." "Rubbish," James said flatly. "This room doesn't just appear by accident. And I've never heard of Hogwarts accepting transfer students midterm." Harry was trapped, and he knew it. These were the Marauders, masters of deception and secret keeping. They'd see through any basic lie he tried to tell. Making a split-second decision, Harry opted for a version of the truth. "My name is Harry. I'm from the future. About 20 years from now." A beat of silence followed his proclamation. Then Sirius barked out a laugh. "Right, and I'm Merlin himself." "Try again, mate." "I'm serious," Harry insisted. "I used something called the Tempest Mirror to come back. I wanted to see what Hogwarts was like back then. To meet people I've only heard stories about." James lowered his wand slightly, curiosity battling with suspicion in his expression. "The Tempest Mirror? That's supposed to be a myth. You've heard of it?" Harry asked, surprised. "We've researched all sorts of magical artifacts," Remus explained cautiously. "For academic purposes." Sirius snorted at that, but kept his wand trained on Harry. "Prove it. Prove you're from the future." Harry hesitated, weighing his options. What could he reveal that wouldn't drastically alter their futures? "I know you're working on a magical map of Hogwarts," he said finally, gesturing to the table in the corner. "The Marauder's map. Messrs. Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Proms are proud to present, and all that. I know that those are your nicknames because you're Animagi. Well, except for Remus." The 4 boys exchanged alarmed glances. "How could you possibly know that?" Peter squeaked, speaking for the first time. "Because when I'm from, the map is famous. And so are you." James stepped forward, studying Harry's face intently. "You look familiar. Almost like you," Sirius finished, his eyes widening. "Blimey, James, he looks just like you." A heavy silence fell over the room as the implication sank in. Harry met his father's gaze steadily, seeing the exact moment when understanding dawned in those hazel eyes. "You're my son," James whispered. It wasn't a question. Harry nodded, a lump forming in his throat. Yes. Bloody hell, Sirius breathed, finally lowering his wand. James, he's your spitting image. Except the eyes, Remus noted, stepping closer. Those aren't your eyes, James. They're my mother's, Harry said softly. James's face split into a sudden grin. Evans? Please tell me it's Evans. Despite everything, Harry couldn't help but laugh. Yes, Lily Evans. James whooped triumphantly, turning to his friends. You hear that? I'm Mary Evans. I knew it. Calm down, Prongs, Remus chuckled, though he looked just as amazed. This is, well, it's incredible. But also dangerous. Harry, you do realize you shouldn't be telling us about the future, right? It's fine, Harry assured him. The Tempest Mirror doesn't actually change the past. It creates a sort of temporary branch of time. When I leave, it's like none of this ever happened. Sirius looked relieved. Well, in that case, tell us everything. Am I still devastatingly handsome in the future? Do I have a fleet of motorcycles? Have I broken every heart in Wizarding Britain? The questions brought Harry crashing back to the reality of what lay ahead for these boys. James and Lily murdered, Sirius imprisoned for 12 years, Remus isolated and impoverished, Peter turned traitor. The weight of that knowledge must have shown on his face, because the excited chatter died away. What is it? James asked, his smile fading. What's wrong? Nothing, Harry said quickly. It's just strange to finally meet you all. I've heard so many stories. Remus, perceptive as ever, seemed to catch that Harry wasn't telling the whole truth, but mercifully didn't press the issue. Well, since you're here for a limited time, what would you like to do? Want a proper tour of Hogwarts from the experts? Absolutely, Harry agreed, grateful for the change of subject. I'd like to see what you lot get up to when you're not in detention. Sirius grinned wickedly. Bold of you to assume we're ever not in detention. But as it happens, we're free tonight. And we were just about to execute a particularly brilliant prank in the Slytherin common room. Sirius, Remus warned, perhaps we shouldn't involve Harry in anything that could get him in trouble. What trouble? James countered. He'll be gone by tomorrow, remember? Besides, it's practically his birthright to participate in a marauder mission. Harry found himself smiling. I'm in. That's my boy. James beamed, slinging an arm around Harry's shoulders as if they'd known each other forever. The casual gesture nearly undid Harry completely. As they left the room of requirement, James pulled something from his robes. We'll all need to fit under this. Harry's breath caught as James unfurled the invisibility cloak, the same one that would one day pass to him. The cloak of invisibility, he murmured. You have one in the future too? James asked. The same one, Harry replied quietly. You passed it on to me. Something in Harry's tone made James study him curiously, but again, no one pressed for details. Under the cloak, the five of them barely fit, requiring a hunched, awkward shuffle through the corridors. They were halfway to the dungeons when Harry heard a voice that made his blood run cold. I just don't understand why you defend him, Lily. After what he called you. The marauders froze. Around the corner came two girls, one with flaming red hair that Harry recognized immediately as his mother, and another whom he didn't know. I'm not defending him, Lily Evans replied, her voice tired. I just don't think hexing him in his sleep, as Potter suggested, is the answer. Speak of the devil, Sirius whispered, nudging James. Your future wife approaches, Prongs. Under the cloak, Harry could feel his father tense beside him, a mixture of excitement and nervousness radiating from him. It struck Harry then how young they all were, just 15 or 16, with no inkling of the future that awaited them. As the girls passed, Harry couldn't help but stare at his mother. She was exactly as he'd imagined from the photographs, fiery and vivacious, with the same green eyes he saw in the mirror every day. He was so transfixed that he didn't notice Sirius mischievously sticking his foot out from under the cloak until it was too late. "Douse!" James exclaimed as he tripped over Sirius's extended leg, tumbling out from under the cloak and landing at Lily's feet. "Potter!" Lily exclaimed, jumping back in surprise. "Were you following us?" "No. I mean, yes. I mean..." James scrambled to his feet, running a hand through his hair nervously, a gesture Harry recognized from his own habits. "I was just patrolling." "You're not a prefect," Lily pointed out, her eyes narrowing suspiciously. "Citizens patrol," James improvised. "Very important for school safety, you know." Under the cloak, Sirius was shaking with suppressed laughter, and Remus looked thoroughly exasperated. Harry, however, was watching the interaction with fascination. So this was how his parents had been: James, hopelessly smitten and trying too hard; Lily, smart and not having any of it. "Who else is with you?" Lily demanded, peering into the seemingly empty corridor. "I know your shadow's black and Pettigrew can't be far behind." As if on cue, Peeves the poltergeist came zooming around the corner, cackling madly. "Oh, students out of bed. Should tell Filch, I should." "Don't you dare, Peeves," James hissed. But Peeves had spotted something else, the partially visible feet of those still under the cloak. "What's this?" "Floating feet. Invisible bodies. Students using invisibility tricks in the corridors." His shout echoed through the halls, and immediately they heard the wheezing, hurried footsteps that could only belong to Argus Filch. "Run!" Sirius yelled, throwing off the cloak. The group scattered, with Remus grabbing Harry's arm and pulling him down a different corridor. "This way, secret passage." Remus panted, leading Harry to a tapestry depicting a forest scene. He tapped a specific tree with his wand, and the tapestry rolled up, revealing a narrow stone passageway. They hurried through, emerging minutes later in a corridor Harry recognized as being near the Gryffindor common room. "That was close," Remus said, catching his breath. "The others know to meet back at the tower if we get separated." Sure enough, within 10 minutes, they were all safely gathered in the Gryffindor common room, recounting their narrow escape with much laughter and embellishment. "Did you see Evans's face when Peeves started shouting?" Sirius guffawed. "She looked like she was considering joining our mad dash just to avoid getting caught with us." "She wasn't that horrified," James protested weakly, though he was grinning too. Harry sat among them, soaking in every moment, committing each laugh and gesture to memory. Here they were, the Marauders in their prime, carefree and united. His father, vibrant and full of life. Sirius, unburdened by years of false imprisonment. Remus, not yet worn down by discrimination and loss. Even Peter, before his betrayal, was just a boy swept up in the adventures of his more talented friends. As the night wore on, they shared stories, the Marauders recounting their greatest pranks and escapades, and Harry carefully telling them about his own Hogwarts adventures, edited to remove any references to their future fates. He told them about the Philosopher's Stone, the Chamber of Secrets, the Triwizard Tournament, and Dumbledore's army, watching their expressions shift from amazement to pride. "You slew on a dragon?" Sirius exclaimed, eyes wide with admiration. "That's the most brilliant thing I've ever heard." "Sounds like you got my knack for finding trouble," James said proudly. "And clearly Lily's talent for getting out of it," Remus added with a knowing smile. The fire had burned low when Harry felt a strange pulling sensation in his chest. Looking out the window, he saw the first silvery edge of the moon beginning to rise over the forbidden forest. "I think my time's almost up," he said softly, feeling a pang of loss so acute it was physical. The jovial atmosphere sobered immediately. "Already?" James asked, disappointment clear in his voice. "But there's so much more to talk about, so much more to show you." "I know," Harry said, his throat tight. "But the magic only lasts until moonrise." They moved to the window, watching as the moon climbed higher in the sky. The pulling sensation intensified with each passing moment. "Before you go," Sirius said suddenly, Do we see you?" In the future, I mean. Are we part of your lives? The question pierced Harry's heart. How could he answer that? How could he tell them that James and Lily would die when Harry was just a baby? That Sirius would spend 12 years in Azkaban, only to escape and then die just 2 years later? That Remus would live a life of poverty and prejudice before finally finding happiness, only to lose it in battle? You're all a huge part of my life, he said carefully. In different ways. Something in his expression must have given away more than he intended, because James stepped forward, placing his hands on Harry's shoulders. Listen to me, Harry, he said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. Whatever happens in the future, and I can tell from your face that it's not all sunshine and Quidditch wins. I know this. I am proud of you. I don't need to know the details to see what kind of person you are. Tears welled in Harry's eyes, and he didn't bother blinking them away. I wish we had more time. So do I, James said softly. But I'm glad we had this. Even if I won't remember it, even if it's just a dream that fades, somewhere in time, we had this moment. The moonlight streaming through the window grew brighter, and Harry felt the room of requirement calling him back across the decades. You have to go back to the room, Remus realized. That's where the portal is anchored. They hurried through the corridors, no longer caring about being caught. When they reached the 7th floor, Harry paced 3 times, thinking of the room with the Tempest mirror. The door appeared, and inside, the hourglass was glowing brightly, its galaxies swirling faster now. So this is goodbye, Sirius said, trying to sound casual but failing to hide the emotion in his voice. For now, Harry replied, knowing it wasn't true for most of them but needing to say it anyway. Peter hung back awkwardly, but Remus stepped forward, offering his hand. It was an honor to meet you, Harry. You've grown into an exceptional wizard. Harry clasped his future professor's hand warmly. The honor was mine, Remus. Sirius came next, pulling Harry into a tight hug. Keep causing trouble in our name, you hear me? Always, Harry promised, returning the embrace. Finally, he turned to his father. James seemed to be struggling for words, which Harry understood perfectly. What could possibly be said in this moment? In the end, words weren't necessary. James pulled Harry into a fierce hug, one that contained all the years they would never have, all the conversations they would never share, all the moments that had been stolen from them. I love you, son, James whispered, his voice rough with emotion. Even though I don't know you yet where you're going, I love you. I love you too, Dad, Harry managed, his voice breaking on the word he'd never had the chance to say aloud before. The moon had fully risen now, and the pull was becoming impossible to resist. Harry stepped back, memorizing their faces one last time, young, alive, full of possibilities. Tell my mom, tell Lily that I wish I could have met her tonight too, he said. I will, James promised, then with a mischievous smile added, though she probably won't believe a word of it. Harry laughed through his tears, backing toward the hourglass. Goodbye, he said simply, then touched the glass once more. The world dissolved again, colors and sounds blending and stretching until, with a sudden stillness, everything solidified. Harry found himself back in the room of requirement as he had left it, photographs and mementos surrounding him, the Tempest mirror now dark and lifeless before him. Nearly headless Nick drifted through the wall. Ah, you returned. Was it what you hoped for? Harry touched his face, feeling the wetness of tears he hadn't realized he was still shedding. It was more, he said quietly. As he made his way back to Gryffindor Tower under his invisibility cloak, the same one his father had wrapped around them both just hours ago and decades in the past, Harry felt a curious mixture of grief and peace. The wound of his parents' absence had been reopened, yet somehow, it didn't hurt as much as before. He had met them now. He had laughed with his father, seen his mother's fiery spirit, experienced firsthand the brotherhood of the Marauders before tragedy tore them apart. It was both more and less than he had hoped for, more joy, less closure. When he finally fell asleep that night, his dreams were filled not with the green light and screams that had haunted him for so long, but with laughter echoing through Hogwarts corridors, 5 boys running through the night, making memories that, in one timeline at least, would never be forgotten. The Forgotten Legacy of Salazar Slytherin. The rain fell in heavy sheets across the grounds of Hogwarts, turning the dirt paths to mud and creating a constant drumming against the ancient castle windows. Harry Potter sat in the Gryffindor common room, staring absently at the crackling fire while his friends argued good-naturedly over a game of wizard's chess. Knight to e5, Ron commanded, a satisfied smirk playing across his freckled face. "Oh, that's just not fair," Hermione protested as Ron's knight demolished her bishop with unnecessary violence. Harry would normally have enjoyed watching their game, but tonight his mind was elsewhere. Earlier that day, during a particularly tedious history of magic lesson, he had found himself flipping ahead in his textbook to stay awake. A brief mention of a secret archive created by Salazar Slytherin had caught his attention, describing historical rumors of a collection of magical knowledge separate from the infamous Chamber of Secrets. "Harry, are you listening?" Hermione's voice broke through his thoughts. "Sorry, what?" "I asked if you wanted to play the winner," she said, gesturing to the chessboard where her king was now cowering from Ron's approaching queen. "Actually," Harry replied, leaning forward, "I was thinking about something Professor Binns covered today." Ron raised an eyebrow. "You were actually listening to Binns?" "I spent the whole class trying to balance my quill on my nose." "Not exactly," Harry admitted. "I was reading ahead in the book and found something interesting about Salazar Slytherin." Hermione's interest was immediately piqued. "What did you find?" "According to the text, there's a rumor that Slytherin created a secret archive of magical knowledge somewhere in the castle. Not the Chamber of Secrets, something different." "Another secret chamber?" Ron groaned. "Because the last one worked out so well for us." "It's not a chamber exactly," Harry explained. "The book called it the Serpent's Archive, supposedly a collection of Slytherin's most valuable magical texts and discoveries." "I've never read about that in Hogwarts, a history," Hermione said, her brow furrowed. "It was just a small paragraph," Harry replied. "Apparently most historians consider it a myth." "Like they considered the Chamber of Secrets a myth?" Ron pointed out. The three friends exchanged meaningful glances. If the Chamber of Secrets had turned out to be real, perhaps this archive could be as well. "Even if it is real," Hermione said cautiously, "why are you interested in finding Slytherin's private library?" "Given his views on Muggleborns, I doubt it contains anything particularly wholesome." Harry had been asking himself the same question since reading about the archive. "I keep thinking about what the Sorting Hat told me in first year, that I could have done well in Slytherin. And after everything with the chamber, with Riddle's diary, I want to understand." "Understand what?" Ron asked. "If Slytherin was always the way history portrays him, maybe there's more to the story." Hermione considered this. It would be academically valuable to learn more about one of the founders from his own writings rather than just second-hand accounts. "And," Harry added, "if there is dangerous magic in this archive, wouldn't it be better if we found it instead of someone like Malfoy?" That seemed to settle the matter for Ron. "Fair point. So how do we find this archive?" "Please tell me the book gave some clues, because Hogwarts is rather large, in case you haven't noticed." "Nothing specific," Harry admitted. "Just that it's hidden in plain sight and can only be accessed by a true heir of Slytherin." "Well, that's just perfect," Ron sighed. "We need a descendant of Slytherin who isn't a raging megalomaniac." "Those must be so common." Harry shifted uncomfortably. "Actually, I was thinking. Voldemort opened the chamber by being a Parselmouth. And I can speak Parseltongue too." "Harry, you're not seriously suggesting," Hermione began. "I'm not saying I'm Slytherin's heir," Harry clarified quickly. "But maybe the magic just responds to the ability, not the bloodline." Hermione didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue further. "So where do we start looking?" "Hidden in plain sight could mean anywhere in the castle." Harry had been pondering this very question all afternoon. "I think we should start in the dungeons, near the Slytherin common room. That would be the most logical place for Slytherin to hide something." Great, Ron muttered. A nighttime excursion to the dungeons. Nothing could possibly go wrong. Despite his complaints, both Ron and Hermione agreed to help. That night, after the rest of Gryffindor Tower had gone to sleep, the three friends huddled under the invisibility cloak and made their way through the silent castle toward the dungeons. The lower levels of Hogwarts were cold and damp, lit by flickering torches that cast long shadows along the stone walls. They moved carefully, avoiding Filch and Mrs. Norris, until they reached the corridor where they knew the entrance to the Slytherin common room was located. Now what? Ron whispered. We can hardly stand here all night hoping to spot something suspicious. Harry, try speaking Parseltongue to the walls, Hermione suggested. Like you did with the chamber entrance. Harry nodded, focusing on the stone walls around them. He tried to imagine the carved snakes he had seen in the Chamber of Secrets, and the words came to him. Reveal your secrets, he hissed in Parseltongue. Nothing happened. Maybe try something else? Ron urged, nervously glancing down the corridor. Harry tried several more phrases. Open, show yourself, legacy of Slytherin, but the dungeon walls remained stubbornly solid and unresponsive. After nearly an hour of attempts, they were about to give up when a soft voice spoke from the shadows. You're looking in the wrong place. The trio whirled around, wands raised, to find the silvery form of the Bloody Baron hovering near the ceiling. The Baron? Hermione gasped. I've never heard him speak before. The ghost of Slytherin House regarded them with hollow eyes. Few have reason to address me, and fewer still would seek what you seek. Harry lowered his wand slightly. You know about the Serpent's Archive? I know of many things hidden within these walls, the Baron replied cryptically. Salazar Slytherin was a complicated man, misunderstood by history. Can you tell us where to find the archive? Harry asked, hardly daring to hope. The Baron drifted closer, his silvery blood stains gleaming in the torchlight. Why should I reveal Slytherin's secrets to 3 Gryffindors? Harry met the ghost's gaze steadily. Because I think Slytherin's true legacy has been corrupted. Voldemort, Tom Riddle, used the Chamber of Secrets to attack innocent students. That can't be what Slytherin intended when he built Hogwarts. The Baron studied Harry for a long moment. Perhaps not, he conceded eventually. Salazar valued cunning and ambition, yes, but also knowledge and self-preservation. The chamber was but one aspect of his legacy. And the archive is another? Hermione pressed. The Serpent's Archive contains knowledge Slytherin deems too valuable to be lost, the Baron confirmed. Knowledge he believed would be needed in times of great danger. So where is it? Ron asked impatiently. The Baron's expression grew stern. Not in the dungeons. Slytherin was more cunning than to hide his greatest treasures beneath his own house, where they would be most expected. Then where? Hidden in plain sight, as you said, the ghost replied. In the place where all 4 founders left their mark. The Great Hall. With that cryptic statement, the Bloody Baron drifted backward through the wall, leaving the 3 friends staring at each other in bewilderment. The Great Hall? Ron echoed. But that's the most public place in Hogwarts. How could there be a secret archive there? It makes a certain kind of sense, Hermione mused. The one place students and teachers see every day, but would never think to look closely at. We should check it out now, Harry decided. While everyone's asleep. They made their way back up from the dungeons, careful to stay under the invisibility cloak and avoid Peeves, who was bouncing gleefully around the 2nd floor. When they finally reached the Great Hall, they found it eerily quiet, the enchanted ceiling reflecting a cloudy night sky with just a few stars peeking through. What exactly are we looking for? Ron asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The Baron said it was a place where all 4 founders left their mark, Hermione reminded them, looking around thoughtfully. The house tables? The enchanted ceiling? The banners, Harry suggested, pointing to the 4 house banners that hung above the staff table, each representing one of the founders. They approached the front of the hall, examining the banners closely. The Slytherin banner, with its silver serpent on a green background, looked no different than it did during feasts and ceremonies. I don't see anything unusual, Ron sighed after several minutes. Wait, Harry said suddenly. The Baron said it was hidden in plain sight. What's more in plain sight than the Slytherin crest itself? He stepped closer to the banner and focused on the silver serpent. Speak to me, Salazar Slytherin, greatest of the Hogwarts Four, he hissed in Parseltongue, recalling the phrase that had opened the inner chamber of secrets. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the silver thread of the serpent began to glow, and to their astonishment, the snake detached itself from the fabric and slithered through the air toward the wall behind the staff table. It pressed itself against the stone, forming a shimmering outline of a door that hadn't been there before. Brilliant, Harry, Hermione exclaimed softly. The three approached the newly revealed door cautiously. It bore no handle or keyhole, just the silver outline of the serpent around its edges. I'm guessing another Parseltongue password? Ron suggested. Harry nodded, concentrating again. Open, he commanded simply. The door swung inward silently, revealing a narrow passageway lit by soft, green-tinged light. With a shared look of determination, the three friends stepped through the doorway into Salazar Slytherin's long-hidden archive. The space beyond was not at all what they had expected. Rather than the dark, foreboding chamber they had anticipated, the archive was a circular room with a high, domed ceiling enchanted to show the night sky, much like the Great Hall itself. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with ancient tomes and scrolls, while glass cases displayed artifacts that pulsed with magical energy. At the center of the room stood a large table of polished black stone, its surface etched with an intricate map of the world as it had been known in Slytherin's time. This is incredible, Hermione breathed, immediately drawn to the bookshelves. Some of these books must be over 1,000 years old. Ron approached one of the glass cases, which contained what appeared to be a silver dagger with emeralds embedded in the hilt. Think any of this stuff is dangerous? Probably, Harry replied, moving toward the central table. But I don't think that was the point of this place. As he reached the table, he noticed a small, leather-bound journal placed at its center. The cover bore no title, just the Slytherin crest embossed in silver. With careful hands, Harry opened it to the first page. For those who seek knowledge rather than power, it began, in elegant script. I, Salazar Slytherin, leave this collection not to my descendants by blood, but to my true heirs in spirit, those who understand that ambition without wisdom leads to ruin. Harry, you should see this, Hermione called from the bookshelves. She was holding a thick tome entitled A Complete Etymology of Parseltongue. This could explain so much about how the language works, maybe even how it connects to other forms of magic. And check this out, Ron added, pointing to a display case containing what looked like a stone basin similar to Dumbledore's pensieve, but with serpents carved around its rim. The label says it's for communing with familiars, whatever that means. Harry continued reading from Slytherin's journal. My departure from Hogwarts has been recorded by history, but the reasons have been simplified and distorted. It is true that Godric and I quarreled over the admission of Muggle-born students, but not for the reasons commonly believed. What's it saying, Harry? Hermione asked, noticing his intense concentration. It's Slytherin's personal account of why he left Hogwarts, Harry replied, scanning the pages rapidly. He says he didn't hate Muggle-borns themselves, but feared the connections they maintained with the Muggle world. This was during a time when witch hunts were becoming common. That's actually a reasonable concern for that historical period, Hermione admitted, coming to read over his shoulder. Godric believed in boldness and openness, while I advocated for secrecy and caution, the journal continued. I feared that Muggle-born students would, intentionally or not, expose our kind to those who would destroy us. History has painted me as a bigot, but I sought only to protect our way of life in an age of danger. It doesn't excuse everything, Harry noted, but it does make him more understandable. Ron joined them at the table. So what about the Chamber of Secrets? And the monster that was supposed to purge the school of those Slytherin deemed unworthy? Harry slipped forward in the journal until he found an entry about the chamber. The chamber below the school serves a dual purpose. Yes, it houses a basilisk, a weapon of last resort should Hogwarts face existential threat. But it is also a sanctuary, a place where the most dangerous magical knowledge could be contained safely away from young, untrained minds. He created the chamber as a safeguard against external threats, Hermione realized, not as a way to attack students within the school. Then Tom Riddle completely misunderstood, or deliberately twisted, Slytherin's intention, Harry said, thinking back to the events of his second year. So what's this archive for, then? Ron asked, gesturing around the room. If the dangerous stuff was kept in the chamber? Harry found the answer a few pages later. While the chamber contains knowledge too dangerous for general access, this archive houses wisdom I believe essential for Wizardkin's continued thriving. Spells of protection and healing, the cultivation of magical plants and creatures, methods of peaceful coexistence with other magical beings. These are my true legacy, not the fear and suspicion attributed to me by later generations. The three friends spent hours exploring the archive, discovering texts on forgotten branches of magic, detailed correspondence between Slytherin and the other founders, and artifacts created during Hogwarts' earliest days. Hermione was particularly fascinated by a series of scrolls detailing magical theory that predated modern spellcasting techniques. This could revolutionize how we understand magic, she whispered, handling the ancient parchment with reverence. It's a completely different approach than what we're taught now. Harry, meanwhile, had found something equally intriguing, a small section dedicated to Parseltongue, including methods for teaching the language to those not born with the ability. According to this, he told Ron and Hermione, Parseltongue wasn't always considered dark magic. It was respected as one of the oldest magical languages, particularly useful for healing spells because of its precision. Healing? Ron repeated skeptically. With snake language? It makes sense, Hermione interjected. Snakes have been symbols of healing in many cultures. The caduceus, a staff with serpents wrapped around it, has been a medical symbol for centuries. As dawn approached, they reluctantly prepared to leave the archive, knowing they needed to return to Gryffindor Tower before the rest of the school awoke. Hermione had carefully copied several pages of notes, while Harry had committed to memory the most important revelations from Slytherin's journal. Should we tell anyone about this place? Ron asked as they prepared to exit. Dumbledore, maybe? Harry considered this. I think we should talk to him, yes. This knowledge shouldn't remain hidden, but it needs to be approached carefully. Some people wouldn't want Slytherin's image rehabilitated. Like the current Slytherins who use his name to justify their blood prejudice, Hermione noted. Or people from other houses who've built their identity around opposing everything Slytherin stands for, Harry added thoughtfully. Before leaving, Harry approached the central table one last time, drawn to the final pages of Slytherin's journal. The last entry caught his attention. To whoever finds this archive, you stand at a crossroads of history. The knowledge contained herein can build bridges between the wizarding traditions I sought to preserve and the new blood that Godric rightfully welcomed. It can heal the rifts that began with my departure, rifts I regret, though my concerns were genuine. Use this wisdom not to elevate one house or philosophy above others, but to strengthen Hogwarts as a whole. For division among us has always been our greatest weakness, while unity remains our greatest strength. As they slipped back through the doorway into the Great Hall, the silver serpent returned to its place in the Slytherin banner, and the hidden entrance disappeared once more into solid wall. The hall was beginning to brighten with the first light of dawn filtering through the high windows. I think I understand now, Harry said quietly as they made their way back to Gryffindor Tower under the invisibility cloak. Understand what? Ron asked. Why the Sorting Hat thought I could do well in Slytherin. It's not about blood purity or dark magic. It's about determination, resourcefulness, and preservation. Those aren't inherently evil traits. They're not, Hermione agreed. Just as courage isn't always good if it's not tempered with wisdom. So now what? Ron asked as they reached the portrait of the fat lady, who was still snoring gently in her frame. Harry thought about the complex legacy they had uncovered, and how it challenged the simple narratives that had shaped the wizarding world's understanding of its own history. We learn from it, he said finally. We remember that people, even founders of Hogwarts, are complicated. They make mistakes, have fears and prejudices shaped by their times. But understanding that doesn't mean excusing the harm those fears can cause when taken to extremes. He thought of Tom Riddle, who had claimed Slytherin's legacy while perverting its true purpose. Of how easy it was to twist the past to justify the present. Of how essential it was to look beyond surface narratives to find deeper truths. Wildbird, Hermione whispered to the now-stirring fat lady, who grudgingly swung forward to admit them. As they climbed through the portrait hole into the Gryffindor common room, still empty in the early morning hour, Harry felt a sense of responsibility settling over him. The archive wasn't just a historical curiosity, it was a chance to bridge ancient divides, to reclaim aspects of Slytherin's legacy from those who had distorted it. You know, Ron yawned as they prepared to head up to their dormitories for what little sleep they could get before classes, for a night spent in a secret chamber created by Salazar Slytherin that was surprisingly lacking in deadly monsters. Harry smiled. Sometimes the most dangerous things aren't creatures with fangs, but ideas taken out of context. And sometimes, Hermione added with a small smile, the most valuable treasures aren't gold or weapons, but understanding. As Harry finally lay down in his four-poster bed, his mind was still in the archive, pondering the complex man whose legacy had been reduced to simplistic villainy by subsequent generations. In some ways, it was a cautionary tale about how history remembers people, often in broad strokes that miss the nuance of lived experience. He fell asleep thinking about the last words in Slytherin's journal, words that seemed more relevant now than ever. Unity remains our greatest strength. Perhaps that was the most important lesson hidden in the Serpent's archive, not ancient spells or magical artifacts, but a reminder that Hogwarts was always meant to be greater than the sum of its houses. And that even centuries-old divides could, with understanding and effort, begin to heal.